Alrighty. I want to talk a little bit about brains and stuff of that nature, and the dunning-kruger effect and whatnot. I came across the dunning-kruger effect a number of months ago with watching Stefan Molyneux, who is, those of you who don't know, is a qualified Canadian philosopher who's sort of been lumped in as right-wing, although he's really not. He's just a philosopher. He doesn't believe in left-wing or right-wing. He believes in philosophy to the point that he thinks philosophy should pretty much take the place of culture almost, and rightio. Anyway, Dunning-Kruger effect, as he explained it, was I was actually a talk that he gave in Melbourne. I wasn't there personally, but I've seen it uploaded to YouTube, and I've got it on my other phone. And basically, he, stated that the more self-assured that people are, the more clueless they are about a particular thing. And really speaking, the way I understood it, as he's explained it, is more so in terms of echo chamber. And, almost like as though if you spend too much time in your own bubble, in your own echo chamber, it doesn't really help the stupidity factor, because it's just sort of you going around in circles. I can give a great example. I've seen it amongst fucking, let's face it, I've come from, I'm probably the 12th generation sheep farm. I'm actually the first one out of like 12 generations not to be in farming as my main employment for most of my life. My father, he's been in farming pretty much all his life, except for a short stint making windows, believe it or not, and other bits and pieces here and there. But generally speaking, he's probably spent less than a year of his career, he's now retired, in something other than farming. Less than a year, no shit. Maybe a couple of years. But, I suppose Meatworks is technically farming related. He was in a slaughterhouse at one point there. So anyway, I sit there and, in terms of mulesing sheep, 12 generations behind me of sheep farming. I know stuff about sheep. I am not the expert that my father is, but I can pick different diseases. I don't know how many lambs I've delivered, pulled out that were stuck, including dead ones. And I can pick diseases in sheep and know about things that a lot of people sort of, haven't heard of for the most part. And, you got guys out there who are so certain about mulesing of sheep. Long and short of it is, it's basically a technique that's, I like to call it a facelift on their ass, because that's more or less a nice version of what it is. But it's designed, it's to do with the genes of the merino, and the fact that they always seem to be very wrinkly, and the way you get the wrinkles out is to give them a facelift on their ass. Why do you not want wrinkles? There's a high chance that you're going to end up with piss and shit in between those wrinkles, and then that attracts flies, and they end up getting fly struck. Now, as I've been talking, I've thought more than just one. I've thought of 3 different cases. It seems they all don't like it. Mulesing's bad. It's not, we want wool that comes from non-muled sheep. There's actually no way to tell if wool's come from sheep that are mulesed or not. But, you have these sort of echo chamber characters in the city who, one accountant asks his accountant mate, what are the mules? What do they even need a mules for? What do they need to do it? And one accountant asks the other, and the other says, I don't know, I'll ask my lawyer mate. So then the lawyer mate gets asked, and she says, oh, I don't think they need to do it. It's just cruelty for profit, which blows back in the face of any fucking logic when it comes to farming. The crueler you are to animals, the less they'll produce. That's well known. A calm animal produces a lot better stuff. In fact, if sheep have enough of an emotional shock, it causes what they call a break in the wool, and the wool's downgraded to basically fucking quilt filling. Really, quilt filling. That's, you know, because you got a break in the wool. That can happen under bad feed conditions. It can happen under stress alone, particularly if they, get attacked by a fox and have their lamb eaten in front of them. That's enough of an emotional shock, although they're not breastfeeding anymore, so it's not a problem nutritionally. It's enough of an emotional shock to give them a break in the wool. Getting off track here anyway. Some people think, oh, the more cruel they are, the more money they make, and all this sort of bullshit. But there's always some lawyer talking to some fucking accountant, talking to another accountant, and between the three of them, inside their own little echo chamber, they've decided that fucking 12 generations worth of sheep farming wouldn't know what the fuck it's doing, you know. And it doesn't end there. Good example of someone who's highly self-assured. They decided to write a book on animal husbandry, and my mum saw it for $2 in an op shop like a Salvo's or something, and she got it, and holy fucking crap, they did not know much about sheep at all. So many references back to goats and dogs and cats, and their knowledge of sheep was fucking hopeless. But they were so knowledgeable that they wrote a book on it. And yet most of them, give example. Sheep breaks a leg, what do? You get 1-inch poly pipe, like the shit that's, feeding my house, and, the black polyethylene pipe. I've probably got some blowing around. In fact, there's a bit of 3/4-inch polyethylene pipe. So what you do is you get the 1-inch stuff and you slit it right down the top, almost like you're splitting a log, and you cut that with a hacksaw, and you whack on the two halves, and then you wrap duct tape around it, and that is basically what you need is to heal a sheep's leg. I have done it personally, and it has worked fucking fantastically. And I, heard about it through other people, including another guy I worked for and another farmer my mum knew, who sort of explained it a bit more in detail after I'd already done it. We needed to know how long to leave it on there for, and he knew how long to leave it on there. Anyway, long and short of it is, you looked in there and they're talking about putting plaster casts on the same way you do on a broken dog leg. Oh, fuck off. How are you going to put plaster over fucking wool? Are you fucking stupid? Not all sheep have wool on their legs. Border Leicesters generally don't, but Merinos sometimes, actually most often they do. Merinos do, but not Border Leicesters. That's another sort of, I think it's up in the north of England against the border with Scotland. It's a meat breed. It's sort of pretty mediocre wool, but fairly good meat breed that my uncle used to have shitloads of them here on this property. And they're talking about shit like this, and you're thinking, what the fuck? No idea, but they're so knowledgeable, they're so self-assured, they wrote a fucking book on it. Holy smoke. Can you imagine sending a sheep out in the fucking rain with a plaster cast on? I mean, how fucking over the top of fucking wall, I mean, how fucking stupid can you get? Anyway, what was the other one I was thinking of? Shit. In a second. Can't really remember what the third one was that I was going to say, but I thought of another third one. And that is this fucking thing my dad keeps getting. They call it sheep notes. And you got a bunch of university students who are still quite literally in their 20s who do research on sheep things, and they find out miraculous things like maybe if you grow long grass, a certain kind of long grass, in rows, the lambs will be able to get more wind protection from it, and due to a lack of exposure that they wouldn't have with this grass, due to being more sheltered, they have a high chance of survival as little fucking young lambs, as, babies, so to speak. Newsflash. Young lambs will die of exposure. Holy shit. Well, humans have been dying of exposure for the last couple thousand years, and everyone fucking knew that. Rightio. So what we do is, we have 3 people who work for the government, who fell out of university 2-3 years ago, who tell us stuff that we've known since we were still back in England. Mind you, I can trace the family tree back to 1565, and almost every one of us has been farmers since 1565. Oh, wow. Who would have known? Young animals die of wind exposure. Whoa! Fucking hell. How many, goddamn, how many rocket scientists do you need to change a fucking light globe, honestly? A lot of these sort of things, you sort of see and you just sit there thinking, fuck me. It's, as I said to my father, you got people here, like yourself, with literally half a century of experience being dictated to by some idiot who fell out of fucking university 3 years ago with 3 years experience in the experimental field, but not in the real world field of farming, not half a century worth of real world farming. And it's just sit there going, what the fuck? But this is the thing, good examples, all these people, they're so self-assured because they actually realise they're not. It's just people who are just certain of themselves who believe they're smart when they're telling you shit that you already knew fucking 50 years ago. Hell, my family already knew generations ago, It's just obvious. But, the same thing can happen in politics as well. I'll give both left and right wing examples, fuck it. There's a lot of knee-jerk leftist shit that happens, and there's a lot of knee-jerk right-wing shit that happens. And I think, really speaking, you've got to be able to consider other ideas, because otherwise, once again, you get stuck in this little fucking chamber, of echo chamber, where all your mates all agree, and anybody who doesn't just gets blocked on Twitter or whatever the fuck they're talking on, or Tumblr or whatever. It's fucking Tumblr if they're left-wing. And they all, I all agree that boom, 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 and this and that and da-da-da-da, I must admit, I've seen someone the other day who was a black person on Tumblr, and they retweeted, they showed a screenshot of someone talking about nobody has ever got out from underneath oppression by trying to beg and put reasonable solutions to their oppressors. Come from a guy in South Africa who, if I'm not too certain, I didn't see on another show as being part of a movement that is cruising headlong towards fucking white genocide to fix their problems. Yeah, the oppressors and the oppressed. And I felt like fucking messaging back to this guy, okay, that's nice. That's nice to know. Is this same shit about oppressors and the oppressed going to apply when he gets involved in white genocide in South Africa? Is this same shit going to fucking apply to him? Or is it only applying now while he's pretending he's the oppressed, while, according to South African boss, your company needs to have, can't have any more than, I thought he said 84%, and I've heard more recently it's actually 8% white people. and some will say it's 12% white people that you can have in your company. So it's a bit of affirmative action over there, where they've basically gone and decided that, well, because the black people are only about 12% or 8%, I don't know if it varies state to state, they've decided that, this is how the makeup of a company should be. Well, they've got troubles with shortage of engineers because they've sacked all the white engineers, except 8%. And that's all great, but now you've got a lot of Indians and no chiefs, if you get what I'm saying. And with a shortage of engineers and shitloads of labourers, it's not fixing the problem. They never had a shortage of labourers to begin with, but all this affirmative action stuff, so you basically get sacked because you're white. They've had multiple versions of this, and they're on at least the 8th version of it, something like that. Black economic empowerment, it's generally called, but see some funny shit. What are the beliefs over here amongst the right wing? And I can understand where they're coming from. They don't want to be strangers in their own country. I've seen white on Vietnamese on white racism. I've faced it myself. My mother's faced it, and it's not a great feeling to be alienated inside your own country that you're born and bred in and built. But there's a little secret behind how Australia manages so far to have 26 years without a recession. That's a fucking miracle, isn't it? They actually call it the Australian economic miracle. There's a little bit more behind it. It's generated by skilled migration and rich people migration, much the same as what Canada's done with Chinese, bringing in the rich Chinese. We've done that sort of shit for years. And this is how, when it got to the GFC, we didn't even have a recession in the GFC. We just had growth drop to 0.2%. But the right hates migration, and we need more jobs for us. And there's enough jobs out there. But, we want more jobs for us locals, not of these foreigners. I hate to tell you, but the economy wouldn't be able to stand up the way it does without this constant influx of foreign money from wealthy foreigners and skilled foreigners moving over here. And if we were to shut that off, all these jobs, they might sort of a little bit because of lack of inflowing money and lack of need to increase infrastructure and housing and all the other fucking things that go with it, food production and everything right down the line that goes with an increased population. Yeah, that's one thing they don't realise, but but I see a lot of sort of in the US, like it's fucking, some of the leftist tactics over there, it's just, there's some real echo chamber stuff there. And there's a show that's The Five, there's a guy who runs it, Gutfeld, on Fox, and they have a guy on there who they call Jean. And obviously it sort of sounds a bit like a Spanish name, but he looks like a black guy, and he's probably a bit of both. And he's like the leftist in the group. And you have people in the comments saying, why is he here? He just says all this stupid shit. But this is the thing, he's there so it doesn't become an echo chamber, because when you sort of get comfortable in this own little, I like to call them, like greenies, I like to call them armchair greenies. They're a bit like the limousine liberals. They're sort of in their own little world, and it all makes sense and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But it's only because they're inside their own bubble. They say there's a bit of trouble with that in San Francisco, with, all these tech companies that are living inside their own politically correct world. And, we should do this and we should do it. And you walk out in the streets of San Francisco and there's fucking guys shitting on the fucking street. There's fucking needles everywhere. It's just a fucking mess, and yet they're all sort of, This little bubble of critical correctness. Well, I've got to do this and we've got to do that. What are you talking about? Your city's like a fucking mess of homeless. And, well, we've got to help the Mexicans come over and this and that, and they should have the right, and they should have free health. What are you talking about? You got fucking homeless all over the goddamn place. Drug problems everywhere, inside your own city. Some of these are 3 blocks from Twitter headquarters. But they're such in that little bubble. Woo! It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And this is why you need to have an open mind. I don't care if you're left wing, you're right wing, you need to have an open mind. You need to have ideas that challenge yours, because basically you won't have a chance to grow. All you'll do is become a drone to whatever politics that you're already in, because you become like a cupcake. Just, one cupcake looking the same as the next, looking the same as the next, because you just were brought up in that set little structure where everything made sense and anything that didn't just got blocked or whatever. And there was no alternative viewpoints. There was nobody to shake the boat, to question this nice little perfect structure of ideas that you took on, not just as a doctrine, but almost as a religious sense. Almost like, you can't say this isn't the case because then heaven doesn't exist type thing, where it goes from ideas to a worldview that they don't want to be rocked, that they're scared of being rocked because it might burst the bubble of their utopian dream. And this is the thing, I don't care if you're left wing or right wing, you should always consider other lines of thought, and there's some things that are just headed in one way, headed in another. And I've seen people, and I sort of agree with them, a knee-jerk reaction to the left and the knee-jerk reaction to the right are both knee-jerk reactions, Sometimes you need to think outside of the box, and sometimes you need a solution for the problem that is a solution for the problem, not a right-wing solution or a left-wing solution, but just an actual fucking solution, and there's a lot of strange shit out there, Some of these people in South Africa are starting to realise that segregation between white and black might actually be the way to go. That could be an option. So, in essence, bring apartheid back. That's what they're saying. Maybe not apartheid for blacks, but apartheid for whites, but essentially still, apartheid, literally translated, means separateness. And maybe they need that separation, to let things cool down a bit, to sort of try and, in many ways, the world wanted apartheid to end, and so end it did from international pressure. But if you know anything about that place, from a lot of accounts that I've heard, apartheid ended because the world wanted it to end, but it didn't really necessarily help the rest of the nation. It may have helped, one group in the nation. It may have helped the majority. But the joint is, political corruption went through the roof. There's a huge amount of everything's just stagnating, Everything's just stalling, and things are turning to shit. And really speaking, I could see this a couple of years ago, that, there's all the chance in the world that it was, all the currency just too few working, too many on welfare. And I could see it a little while back that, maybe not a few years ago, but not so far back that I headed down the same path as Zimbabwe, and in due course, left on this path for 20 years, they're just going to be another fucking Nigeria. It's just fucked, you know. It's amazing some of the lies that are spread through all that too, you know. Oh, the whites grabbed the land. Oh, there's a decent amount of whites that actually paid blacks, you know, directly paid them for the land that they've been on for the last 100+ years, you know. Very interesting to note that a lot of the black people that are there are not originally from South Africa. They come down in the 1700s from tribes northeast of the existing country of South Africa. The whole lot of them didn't even live in South Africa, and then they all come down and they sort of went around the bottom, curved around from the, what would be the northeast of South Africa, and sort of come right down in a swathe along the bottom eastern side of the country. You know, and interesting there, you know, they got whole areas called, what do they call them again? Black traditional lands or something, and you can't live in that entire area if you're white. No white people are allowed, and there's a lot of these fucking areas. And we've got something similar here, but they're not often bigger than a farm size. And I mean a fucking big farm, you know, there might be, you know, they're rarely bigger than about 50,000 acres or anything like that. But Aboriginal reservations, Aboriginal lands, and they're sort of handed back holus bolus back to the Aborigines. They usually own it under a corporation. It'll be blah blah Aboriginal corporation. And that's lands, it's their fucking land. You know, in fact, you often need permission. There's some public roads that cross through these lands, and you actually need permission. You need a permit to even get on that fucking public road that goes through, you know. And then they put restrictions on the amount of alcohol you can bring in. They make you pour the alcohol out before you even go through there, you know, stuff like that. But yeah. So right in this country here, you know, there's certain areas of land I can't live on, and you know, areas that any black person can come and buy anywhere they want, but, you know, really speaking, it's not whole swathe, it's actually large individual farms. Some of these areas are fucking massive. And you look up Arnhem land, that's a whole big chunk up in the top, well, up in the north of the country. It's a huge big chunk. That's all Aboriginal land, you know. And, you know, you can't sort of just, a lot of it's national park, so there's parts that you can go in, but a lot of it is traditional Aboriginal land. And yeah, that is what it is, you know. That started happening in the early 70s. They got some of their lands back, and some of it, you know, often enough is where their family originated from. They may say, well, they don't live there now. Yeah, but the thing is, they originally lived on that property. It's where generations of them were born, and then, you know, there's been times where farmers have basically, a lot of it was government land originally, and they had 100-year leases to farm it, and they've had their lease cut short, and they give them a year and a half's notice or something like that, and they've got to clear out basically, but they get refunded on the lease money, and then bang, the Aboriginals take it over as an Aboriginal lands, usually under a corporation. But yeah, as for the Boyton, the whole echo chamber of assertiveness, I think, God, just look at how high Elvis thinks he is. I think that fucking sums it up there. I mean, the Boy's just a whole ball of fucking fruitcakes as far as I'm concerned, you know. But it's an interesting effect. I know this video's dragging on a bit long, but it's an interesting effect my sister told me about. The lower the... Holy smoke, this cat's running. Fuck me. That was a movie I'd only seen in The Matrix. The lower the socio-economic group a person is in, which is a politically correct way of saying the more white trash they are, the lower they are in the socio-economic scale of socio-economic groups, the larger their pride is. And so the highest amount of pride you will find is in people who spend most of their days having fights, being drunk, and nobody in the entire family has a fucking job. But they have the highest pride of themselves. And you sort of sit there going, what the fuck is going on here? How can you have such high pride of yourself if none of you even have a fucking job? Just is what it is, you know? I'm not saying that there aren't snobby accountants, you know, because I just need to look at my last accountant. It was fucking, you know, so it makes me laugh when you got people that unpractical, they can't change a fucking light bulb, and yet their idea of themselves is through the roof because, you know, they've got a qualification in accounting, which if they don't update every literally 2 or 3 years, they lose the latest trends and it's hopeless, you know. I know of somebody who left accounting to have kids for 7 years, and they come back 7 years after they left, and they said they pretty much had to be re-qualified from scratch. So much they had to go through. But yeah. Anyway, that's these videos dragged on long enough. So there you go.